River is the worst card in the deck. The deuce. He can just bet range. Kind of assumed. And we call range. Okay. So that's how it's gonna be. That's how it's gonna be. I have to say, I'm not very good in chop pots. I have some big news, my fellow ambitious poker players, because the doors to our Mechanics of Poker program are closing. They are closing because behind the scenes we have been working hard on the 2.0 version of the mechanics, which next to more content also will include more personal attention and a more exclusive community, which means that we will only take on a small group of players who fit the profile. This means that right now is your last chance to guarantee a seat in one of the most complete poker coaching programs out there, which will help you break free from low to mid stakes and help you reach high stakes poker games. Throughout the month of July, we are running our first and most likely last promotion ever, a 25% off closing sale on the Mechanics of Poker program. And if you enroll now, you will get lifetime access to all the updates, including all the goodness that is coming up in the Mechanics of Poker 2.0. So grab this opportunity before the doors are closed and let us help you realize your poker goals. Go over to pokerambition.com to enroll. Hi there, boys and girls. Welcome back to another Play and Explain video. And without further ado, let's get into the action. As you can see, I actually already gathered a nice little stack here on the left. That's because I was already recording this video, but my mic was not on. Okay, we basically, I don't recall exactly, I think we got aces in pre-flop. Skill game, I know. However, he folded. It was a bit of a weird hand. He timed for very long, then 4-bet very big. Then I jammed, and then he again went in the tank. It was a bit weird. Given the sizing, I remember I wanted to 4-bet, but given the timing, also saw some merit in calling. And then afterwards, I stacked a recreational player who called my squeeze. The board came low, and I had jacks, and I bet a big jam river. And he had 2-pair as well, as it was 3-3, 6, 4, 5, I believe. But yeah, his 2-pair was not better than my 2-pair. So that's how you get stacks, guys. That's the secret right there. Let's keep the stack to maybe get into some deep spots. Would maybe be interesting. I can talk a little bit about some adjustments that I would recommend making. I don't really know who is who in the pool. So if you're a regular watching, you feel offended because I considered you maybe a recreational player, my apologies. A little bit loose open here with the king 7 with a recreational big blind. Or at least, I'm assuming, just because he's not topping up. This guy, I have played with him before. Needs luck. Sounds reggish. Even though the recreationals probably need more luck. But he does snap call a 3x in the small blind. That's it's quite interesting. Thought of with a small c-bet with the backdoor stuff going on. This defend actually is probably a bit too loose. So don't follow everything I say. All right. He thought about it for a little while and decided to call. Makes me feel like he might still have an underpair and I'm gonna get a snap fold now. Take a little lead here on the turn. Basically, I don't really check call any air on the flop. So just by check calling and the board pairing, I think I just have quite an advantage. He makes a very small raise. I think queen 3, we will probably defend. Because we're not blocking any of the bluffs. We don't have great outs, though. In terms of if he has a king, we're pretty dead. But I think Flush complete, and there is a straight. What to do? In doubt. I'll bet half pot then. I'm in doubt between a couple of sizings. Let's just end up in the middle. He had ace 10. And we won with the queen 3. I guess he checked behind because he thought that we could sometimes have a draw. Like 10 jack. Or a worse first draw. But I don't mind this line. I think it's fine. However, I would probably raise a bit bigger on the turn. To put my queen x more of a tough spot. And if I have a nut flush draw, I'll keep on calling anyway. Min raise quite deep. And I'm gonna call, I think, still any pair when the board is disconnected. On the turn, I probably prefer hearts. Could make an argument for a small bet just to get some protection on the turn. Maybe some thin value, so that's what I'll do. You can also check and call most rivers. Both plays are optional. Kind of depends on how much money you think you will make on the river by bluff catching. Make a little call here with the a6. Let's try a little donkey for the fans. But this guy is a recreational, but I actually play. I'm not really sure if this tag is correct. I'm gonna remove it for now. Interesting turn. Gonna continue with another blocky. Here with the ace 4. Chop versus ace jack. I was I thought about, obviously you think about barreling or checking. That's quite obvious. The downside of barreling this hand would be that I would probably just get called by all the nut flush draws. I'm not really sure what a worse flush draw would do, but I was gonna bat around 3/4. The 4 is not that great. If he had pocket 4s, that's a hand that he could probably fold the turn with. Not really sure. Like, I would probably prefer to have like jack 10, jack queen, like blockers to overpairs. I think that would probably work better. And then we had the ace 4. I 3-betted and c-bet the flop for 3/4, which is, it's around half pot 3/4. Ace 4 can definitely be in there. I assumed he was already going to fold 4s in the flop quite often. A lot of ace highs already on the flop as well. So that's going to be interesting in terms of what I was considering. Turn. The 6 diamonds. He should actually lead range. It's quite an interesting concept. And again, it's mainly he called a 3-bet under the gun. Then he check called a 3/4 bet on the flop. So basically, just by the fact that he called, he now has a range advantage. Because as you see here, under the gun is 6%. We only have 39%. However, we are still a favor in terms of the best hands that we have in our range, like the overpairs. But we also have trash, and he never has trash. And this is kind of where the equity switch sort of comes from. Okay, and if this is the range composition, you have quite a lot of good hands and weak hands, and you want to sort of protect against trash hands. What do you bet? 20%. He checks. So this sim is now already a little bit screwed because people are not donking range here on this turn. And ace 4 is just always checking. Like I said, I wanted to have sort of blockers. Like jack 10 of clubs, for example, would have been great. Queen jack would have been great. Okay, so it seems like my thought process here is reasonably spot on. I think I also talked about barring the ace king, especially without the spade. I mean, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Same with the ace queen. Ace queen is, yeah, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, both have benefits. If you have a spade, you can bluff spade rivers. If you don't have a spade, you get called by spades. So it kind of goes either way. So I think my thought process here was reasonably on point. I'll make a cold 4-bet here. and overcall rate to 3-5. When overcalling, definitely look at playing like clean hands. Like you don't want to be overcalling king 10 offsuit here, for example, but I think 5-3 suited works quite well. Here, I'm just gonna start off with a 1/3 bet. Do we want to bluff this? Do like having the 5 and 3. So let's go for a bet. And hope he folds an underpair. They both basically fold an underpair. That's kind of the idea. He's barrel here with the ace king, putting on a lot of pressure. Plays a min raise. That's a bit of a weird play. I put chips. This kind of sucks in terms of, I don't know who this guy is. I'm leaning towards folding. I'm gonna make a bit of a nitty fold here. I mean, I called 4-bet. We're quite deep, so I won't be doing that with too much trashy hands. Okay. And ace 5. Ooh, it's close. I would definitely fold a hand like ace 9 or ace 6. Ace 6, ace 7, ace 8, ace 9. I would definitely be folding. But I think the ace 5 could or should probably still call. He goes for an overbet on the river. Pretty sure what he would do with pocket 5s or something. We're definitely going to be calling ace jack. I'll be calling some 2 pairs. Ace deuce or something, I think, is a bit of a better call. And then obviously, you know, we still have quite a lot of strong hands. Because like, he might not always have deuces, but he could always have 5s. He could have 5-6 suited and not 6 deuce suited. So I think ace deuce, ace 3 will make better calls than ace 5. So this hand I actually completely misread in game. Apparently I called from the small blind. I thought I called from the big blind. So we're gonna review the hand as if we called from the big blind, because that's kind of where my thoughts were going. So I think that is most relevant. He bets 1/3, which I also saw him do on another, I think it was ace 10-7. So apparently he uses just a lot of small betting as a strategy. So the sim is already not very correct in the first place. So that's something interesting to take in consideration. The turn is a 10, 10 of diamonds. Check. He bets 3/4, which I think is fine. I was leaning towards folding the ace 7s, and that's because like the most natural hands that people like to barrel are equity hands, right? Gutters, so 7-8, 8-9. As you can see here, these hands actually check quite often. I think in practice though, they bet a little bit more often. If you had a 6, so 6-5, I think this hand probably barrels more often as well. Don't really see what checking is achieving. I would have probably barreled this as well. And then when I talked also about the low pairs that are also going to be in there at a certain frequency. So it's going to be quite interesting. We do indeed see that ace 3, for example, and ace deuce are your primary calls. This is also where I was leaning towards. Here you can also see the ace 4, the ace 3 call more than, for example, on an ace 5 hand. And that's mainly, I think, because of the pocket 5s. Maybe 5-4 he's sometimes bluffing. Yeah. Mainly it's going to be, the concept is mainly around blocking these hands. Like I said, I think if we give him more 7-8, 8-9, we're going to be folding more of these aces as well. So I think so far my thought process was good. And then the river is the 4 of spades. And now he decides to go for an overbet. Played the hand pretty GTO approved. And now I was going to call with ace deuce and ace 3. Ace 3 is definitely calling way more than ace 5. So again, that makes sense. Ace jack is actually always folding. That's interesting. I would have called ace jack, but I guess he has more bluffs around the jack than value around the jack. He has king jack, but okay, so he's also always bluffing jack 10. And that's then more relevant apparently than blocking the straight. Maybe the straight goes in the overbet on the turn. That then also plays a part. So that's, I guess, something that I would have gotten wrong. Ace 10 is actually folding quite a lot. That makes a lot of sense. And then queen 6, for example, is probably calling. Yeah, queen 6 is always calling. So this, again, has something to do that a lot of his bluffs are around king 10, jack 10. So you would much rather call ace 3 than ace 10. And you would much rather call queen 6 than all the other hands. And to go back to the cold 4-bet hand, I mean, I cold 4-bet it deep. We see bet at the flop, which is quite good for us. Then on the queen, I mean, we make a bunch of king-queen suited, ace-queen suited, ace-jack suited. We still have jacks, queens, kings, aces, tens. It's just basically our range is just so strong that if he decides to bluff raise the turn into that range, I mean, it's not going to be a great play. And I think it's also not really a range that people are too excited to start bluffing in. So without any further information, I will lean towards passivity there. We only needed, I think, 14%. We did have 4 outs, so that's 8. Maybe some implied odds. But maybe also, like, I guess calling just to hit a straight, given the odds that he gave me, would have also been an option. I'm not sure. I just lean towards the passive side. Maybe he... Sometimes I remember one of my first poker books that I've ever read, they talked about the freeze play. Basically, what you do is you raise turn small to check behind the river. So if he does that sometimes, then and my ace and king is sometimes good, and he just checks behind nines or something. Yeah, then that would actually also be an option. This board I can approach in a couple of ways. I can just go for like a very small bet, like 10% or so. Or I could go for a check. I elected to go for a check and play more big bet. Check. If the board does rainbow, I usually tend to play more small bet. But nothing is good or bad either way. And I think this hand just always wants to check 3 streets. If it starts checking. But I think also if you would bet, let's say I bet 10% the flop, I would probably also check turn. But after betting, it's more likely that he, especially when the flush completes, it's more likely that he will check behind twice with an ace. So that could make you want to lean more towards betting yourself on the turn. But I think if we go in check mode, there's no ace that's going to check behind 3 times. So we don't lose any value. We only lose value from a king. But that's quite unlikely now, is it? Because we have kings. And we won the maximum amount of money there versus ace 10. And I think this hand is a great example of trying to pick a line that you're going to stack his worst good hands. Obviously, if he would have went bet, bet, bet. Actually, maybe if he would have went bet, 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 he could have found a fold. We're playing in quite tight positions. All right, I'll take that. And shall we just ram this one in as well to try to get aces in twice? Let's go. Could also sometimes call here, but you know, given the fact that we were all in here with aces, I decided to jam this one, see if we could get aces all in twice. That would make for a good clickbait. But unfortunately, that didn't work. But hey, you don't hear me complaining, guys. Don't misinterpret this. Okay. But yeah, I definitely think to come back to the king's hand, betting the river is... he would just, let's say for example, we would have bet the river's 3/4 and he would have called. Some people are like, okay, nice. Nice, won a pot, but you need to try to win a stack there. And I think the only way you can win a stack is to take the line that I took. As played. Obviously, you can just go bet as well. Which I think after betting, let's say I would have bet 10% on the flop and I would have checked the turn. He could maybe stab once with ace-10 check behind the river, but most likely would check the turn and still bet the river. Maybe even check behind the river. Some people, I mean, can be quite nitty. And let's try to bet. These are pots that, like the Jack-3 here, these are actually spots that people often don't really care about. But in my opinion, it's a spot where we should definitely try to win the pot quite often. I have some big news, my fellow ambitious poker players, because the doors to our Mechanics of Poker program are closing. They are closing because behind the scenes we have been working hard on the 2.0 version of the mechanics, which next to more content also will include more personal attention and a more exclusive community, which means that we will only take on a small group of players who fit the profile. This means that right now is your last chance to guarantee a seat in one of the most complete poker coaching programs out there, which will help you break free from low to mid stakes and help you reach high stakes poker games. Throughout the month of July, we are running our first and most likely last promotion ever, a 25% off closing sale on the Mechanics of Poker program. And if you enroll now, you will get lifetime access to all the updates, including all the goodness that is coming up in the Mechanics of Poker 2.0. So grab this opportunity before the doors are closed and let us help you realize your poker goals. Go over to pokerambition.com to enroll. Half pot here. Interesting step size. A huge check raise. 4.8x, that's quite a lot. The plan now is to call and hit a flush. Flush is always good as well, so that's good. This is a good turn for him. He did check raise for 5 or something. I think I'm gonna call once more. And easy check on the river. Let's hope he found like 7-5 suited, 6-5 suited. At queen 3. Got a little dunk bet here with the king queen. Under the motto of why not? Under the motto of don't try this at home. Under the motto of I don't think this board is ready to be dunked, Mr. Wacko. And on the turn, it's a very good turn for him. We do have a hand that can still improve. However, he probably has quite a lot of my outs with the 10. That would really suck. And I think I'm actually blocking a lot of the bluffs. King 9, king jack or something. Actually, I'm just going to fold there. The good thing with the ace queen there was as well that, for example, the 6 and the 3 were of diamonds and I had the queen of diamonds. So there were not a lot of rivers that would give his sets boats and me a flush. Make a nitty-ish fold here, I think. That's probably a recreational as well. Here face a 1/3 bet. Not a theoretically approved sizing for your range, but I can think of a hand that will want to do it. I think ace queen usually makes it in a down call here, even though aces, for example, maybe a hand like king queen actually is a better hand to call down with than ace queen, because he's more likely to check maybe aces on the turn, for example. Okay, this really sucks. This is a very good river for him. It's a very good river for him. Yeah, I'm fucked. I'm very fucked. Yeah, king queen I think is my best bluff catcher here. We have the ace queen with the ace of spades blocking ace 4 suited. That would be good as well. Obviously a pair now. Any pair now is better given the way the board ran out. Yeah, I think now I should just call any pair and king queen. And then maybe ace queen with the ace of spades. The river wouldn't have paired. I would have definitely, or at least considered the call, but most probably I would have still called down. The 4-4-2 rainbow, an often over c-betted board if you look at theory at least, but I do think you can get away with it. He used the 1/3 sizing. Actually, it was still used quite often. I mentioned aces, and we saw later on that someone also used the 1/3 here for aces. Aces makes a lot of sense. But if you only had a betting range and maybe you split between 3/4 and 1/3, aces should definitely get into the 1/3. He decided to bet the 1/3. Usually you want to bet a little bit bigger because there's a lot of hands that I'm going to call with right now. And basically by betting 1/3, you're going to give me quite a good price to realize my equity. And I kind of now decide when we want to build a bigger pot or not, basically. So I call, ace queen, call. The turn was the 4, and that's where it gets interesting. He used somewhere between half pot and 3/4. Well, that's indeed correct now. Is it, my friend? Somewhere between half pot and 3/4. Actually, you should block again. That's quite interesting. I would not have thought about blocking again. Yeah, maybe if you have ace queen, the thought of blocking again comes into my mind, but not with a lot of other hands. And again, here we can see the difference. I was talking about king queen versus ace queen. Aces is often blocking or checking. It's not really going to go into sizing. So that's going to make up for something interesting. Let's say he bet half pot, because the sim in general plays a little bit bigger. 20 big blinds, bet at 24 big blinds. First half pot, I mean, ace queen can basically never fold. King queen is actually folding. That's probably because he's sometimes betting ace king in this sizing. Ace queen, sorry, he's sometimes betting ace queen in this sizing. So therefore, king queen is worse than ace queen. But like I said, mainly I think the aces and kings difference, that's really going to show in practice. I don't think people put a lot of ace highs in this bet sizing on the turn. So if he doesn't put much ace highs in this bet sizing on the turn, and the only ace high that he does put in is ace king, for example, then I think king queen is a better call than ace queen. Call. River is the worst card in the deck, the deuce. He can just bet range, kind of assumed. And we call range. Okay, so that's how it's gonna be. That's how it's gonna be. I have to say, I'm not very good in chop pots, but yeah, apparently I blundered this one quite hard because he can bet range, and then we still have 4 5 BB ish call. Oh, here we do indeed see that the ace of spades is better. So my thoughts on calling the ace of spades on the river were indeed correct. King queen is indeed way higher in EV. 11 big blinds versus 5 big blinds. So I was going to call any pair, any king queen, and I wanted to have the ace of spades. And we can see that my reasoning was going in the right direction. However, I apparently missed completely how much money we were actually making. But as you can see here, it's also because a lot of hands are no longer in this line. For example, there's no 10s in this line from out of position. There's very little jacks and queens. So it kind of depends how he constructs his range. But then again, also on the flop, he was checking 44% of the time. There were a lot of air hands that he could barrel off with that decided to check the flop. So very interesting what you guys think about this spot. Yeah, I would have preferred to not have the ace as mentioned, but maybe I took this way too far. This guy went for a small check raise on the flop. Check turn. Could be a hand like pocket deuces or something. Let's say I had ace queen without any spade. I wouldn't have mind betting the turn because then we can sometimes get called by a flush draw or something. That's not really applicable now, so I'll check behind. I'm just gonna fold the river. Here I'll start with a check with the pocket queens. You check behind quite fast. The 6, I think, does interact a little bit with his range. So I think I can get some value now. He does raise. That's quite unfortunate. He did it quite fast. So I'm just going to fold. Just folding. Ha! Got a 3-bet ski with the jack 10 suited. We could also check again, but I think then we might miss a street of hands that would often call, like 7, 6x, 8x, jack-x. So that's why I decided to bet the turn instead of checking the turn. Obviously, the benefit of checking the turn is that he could sometimes start bluffing. But we already gave him the opportunity to step some air on the flop. He didn't. He would have probably already bet some aces. So I think just betting turn small. And on a lot of rivers, I was planning on betting again. This is also in determining whether you should check turn or bet turn. Also to take into consideration if we're going to bet the river. And I was planning on betting the rivers there on blanks, for sure. Dunk Hunter calls a 3x again from the small blind. So I'm assuming recreational. But TheWakko, you call the small blind all the time. But not versus 3x. 3x is a bit expensive. So I'm just going to make a bet. We don't have to call it value. We don't have to call it bluff. It's just a little bit in the middle. Life is God. Analyzed, probably also recreational. I'm going to use the same argument here. No spades, I would sometimes barrel. With spades, I think just check. If he bets the river, I'm most probably calling. I just see recreationals turn over enough king, jack, jack, queen, king, queen on the river, or even the same hand, or even a worse hand, ace, like ace 8 or something. They're just betting because, yeah, they don't really want to check, basically. Started with a small bet there, and I think this is an okay candidate to clip off. Blocking ace jack suited, blocking pocket jacks, blocking ace queen, blocking king queen. So I think that one would have made it all the way. Actually a board where we could have some bets. If we want to check or bet really depends on how aggressive you think he's going to be. Let me start out with a bet. I think it's definitely good to create a betting range here. a very good turn. Also in terms from my range, I think actually I'm going to size down a little bit just because how good the turn is. You're trying to think of his range here in terms of you want to in poker, guys. In poker, you always try to put your opponent in a tough spot. If I would just overbet here, none of his pairs are in a tough spot. And I think we have a jam on the river. Let's throw out a 3-bet here with the king 9. Why the fuck? He has pocket jacks. How do you have pocket jacks, my friend? Do not try that at home, kids. Flatting pocket jacks. King 9, this seems like quite a safe board. So let's start throw out a bet. This hand should actually probably never make it in a 3-bet in the first place. But hey, we're here now. At like Jack 9 or something, I think is a fine 3-bet. I think on the turn we have a check. Don't think he's going to call a bet with ace king on the turn, for example. Ooh, this is quite close, but 5-4 suited, as people here on the channel might know, is my favorite hand. But the fact that that's my favorite hand could actually get me in trouble. I think I'm going to call once, but I'm not too thrilled about it. And actually, I don't mind using the 4 here as a check raise. Can have some ace queen, some king queen, 9s, 4s. I think this hand is actually fine. And he had jacks. That was to be expected that he would show up with a hand like that. But I guess on the turn versus 1/3, he could sometimes bet 8s for sort of protection. But maybe I'm just too optimistic there. I think checking is better than betting. And maybe we should just, maybe we just make money versus the check back range and not versus the betting range. That could, I could definitely see that. Hard to review this hand because I don't think king 9 ever makes it in a 3-bet. As mentioned, indeed, the king 9 suited almost to never makes it. You either want to be a bit lower, a bit higher. However, the sim is a min raise, so he did open 2.3. So we would probably 3-bet a little bit more, but still, I don't think king 9 should be in there. But hey, I just felt like throwing out a little 3-bet. Flop, I went for a 3/4 bet, which is the preferred bet sizing. King 9 is always going to be in there, kind of as expected. And actually on the turn, it becomes quite interesting. Actually, versus the big bet, he should actually already fold his hand some of the time. Quite funky. And I think actually in practice, usually if you face this, people don't have the king 9 suited. So I would definitely consider folding these hands if you face this line versus your population. The turn is a 9, and now it's up to us. The king 9 is clearly checking. The 8-9 is actually sometimes barreling simply because it has a bit more equity. It can get called by 8s. It can get a hand like 10s and jacks probably to fold again. So it has some barrel benefits. But like I said, the king 9, if we do barrel, was for sizing half pot. I think I mentioned ace king is probably folding most of the time. Whereas if we check, probably ace king. I think actually ace king is going to go to showdown a bit more often than we see here. So he needs to have like some small betting simply just to protect versus my random king queen offsuit, for example. So he decides to go for a 1/3 bet. And this is actually the interesting point because let's make it a bit bigger. King 9 actually just ships it in.
I think it's just time to ship it in and go to bed.
Okay, and it's quite funky. And again, it's trying to use its very strong range advantage big blind first under the gun to make him fold 10s, jacks. It's actually calling sometimes with 8s and 8-9 suited, even though hands they are not in there quite often. Ace 4 spades actually calls as well. Ace 8 of spades probably not in the range, I would say, but ace 4 of spades could definitely be in there. 8s could definitely be in there. 8-9 suited, I don't think is in there. tens and jacks. I think tens and jacks could definitely fold the turn here. We have a good blocker, so yeah, I think jamming here is actually quite a good play. I mean, it's a solver. Solver usually makes quite good plays. So, chicken song for the Wacko for not jamming here, guys. 7-8 suited face a 3-bet. Going to make the call. Backdoor straight flush draw for the optimistic poker players out there. So unless he bets 3/4, probably continue. He checks. Bit suspicious, I might say. But I think I'll draw the stab. Let's say he did want to implement a checking range here. Could include 8s or 7s. I think we have an easy bet again here. Now that we have improved, still blocking the 8s and 7s. He could have just 2 overcards. Don't want to bet too big. I think there's still hands like 6s, 7s, 8s that do want to bet some of the time. 9x. I think on the river. So suspicious with this flop check. Ugh. Is he checking the flop with? He could easily still have ace queen. It's definitely a candidate that I would think about to play this way is ace queen. Maybe he's just trapping me with 9s or aces. I think ace 4, ace 5. Ace king. Ace king is one of these hands. I don't know. I think it's very suspicious. Very suspicious. The river was not a queen. I would have definitely fired, but I thought ace, like ace king, you can just bet flop. I will call you with ace jack, ace queen. But obviously with ace queen or ace jack, the value of betting goes down a little bit. So I can then, if you would then find a check, I figured that that would be a hand that you would do it with. And not ace king. Also, I guess a hand like king queen suited or something. So like king queen at diamonds or something he could have. Which would also not be great. The queen was not my favorite card. We face a check, and this is where I have to be very careful with projection and assuming, because we can indeed see that ace king is checking quite often. How I interpret this in my head usually is that I'll bet ace king most of the time and check ace queen, for example, most of the time. But if people, especially nowadays, they kind of balance and use more RNG, then I think I should be very careful in making very drastic assumptions. But, okay. We indeed bet our hand most of the time. Let me see if there's something with his call range. We talked about the king queen at diamonds getting there on the river. That's indeed a hand that could definitely play this way. How often does it check flop? Yeah, very often. I think that's a hand that definitely benefits from checking. He obviously calls all the ace queen, the ace kings. Actually, you should check raise ace king quite often. You should check raise some overpairs. You should call aces. Yeah, I was definitely also suspicious of that. Aces and 9s. Yeah, checking most often. But maybe, like I said, maybe I was being a bit too suspicious. Turn 5, you should check. For example, there's also some hands that are now, and we want to bet mainly half pot. That's kind of what I was going for. Like I said, I think we still want to bet hand like 6s, 7s. So in my head, I would have just constructed a betting range around the half pot. 7, 8, definitely in there. And let me see. So ace queen is actually sometimes folding. Ace king is sometimes folding. So if he now sometimes folds ace queen, then obviously a queen river is less bad for us. He's calling with the flush draws. But for example, a hand like jack 10, I think is way more likely to see bet. So there are some hands here that I don't really think are going to be in the range. But again, should be maybe a little bit careful here with my assumptions. The river is not a 10, but the river is queen. And now he should actually do some dunking. So that's also quite interesting. Queen, jack, and king, queen, for example, should sometimes dunk. But then again, also some bluffs should sometimes dunk. But these hands, I think, usually... So like I said, the jack 10, I think, is often played different. King 10, maybe. And then the queen x that he does river. I think they're most likely checking towards us. This is not good for our hand. Okay. But we can actually see that 7-8 is giving up.
I was bluffing this one every time. I would feel pretty bad with myself if I was to check back the river. I would hate myself. I just feel like a complete and utter coward. I would rather overbluff and sleep well at night. So Pio Solver is a complete coward here.
Because it's mainly folding 8s and 7s. And that's not really a hand that we want to block. That's one. Obviously, he did indeed improve with the ace-queen. I was indeed worried about aces and 9s being in there quite often. He should actually still call ace-king some of the time. It's quite interesting. He should even call ace-10 of diamonds. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think he's going to call with ace-3, ace-4, ace-5. These are definitely hands that I think he could find. And I do indeed agree that 7s and 8s is not great. If the river was not a queen or a king, I would have definitely bluffed and actually checked it in the solver, and the solver definitely agreed with me. Bluff was actually making quite some money as well. EV of 10, no, 13. And as you can see here, we can bluff basically the shit out of him on a 10 river. Because he's just going to have a lot of hands that are going to fold, and a lot of my bluffs will have improved on a 10 with queen 10, jack 10, these type of holdings. So I don't think giving up on the queen was bad. I think if he would have given up on the 10, that would have been bad. But like I said, I would have not given up on the 10. I think now also he's more likely to call 7s and 8s. So we're blocking more calls and we're unblocking more folds. So I think it's a hand that's okay played. Now, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Take a look at other videos that we've made. I'm sure you will like them as well. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. And make sure to join our Discord community so you can stay up to date with new content, new promotions that we have running here at Poker Ambition. And if you want to know more about Poker Ambition and our services, go over to the site pokerambition.com. Thank you guys for watching and see you in the next video.